This is ContraZoom, where we go back and forth about film. I'm your host, Dakota Arsenault. The Toronto International Film Festival is just around the corner and runs from September 5th to the 15th, and we are looking at some of the movies that are playing. Joining the show today to help name some of our most anticipated films is Jeff Ballmer, one half of the Classic Movies Live podcast, and who was just heard on the very last episode, number 284, the 2024 Fantasia Film Festival. Jeff helped me write a blog post about our 5 most anticipated films each, and I will link to that in the show notes as well. And we are basing that article on this episode today. So welcome back to the show, Jeff. How are you?
Pretty good. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been about a week and a half since we last chatted in this format, so I feel like we're doing good, having these like almost weekly touch-ins.
Mm-hmm. And I guess TIFF is in 2 weeks, so I'll see you very shortly.
Yeah, I'm sure we will be at a bunch of the same screenings.
I think so.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. When you were putting together this article, I think you were far more prepared than I was at knowing what was playing at TIFF. But did you meticulously go through everything again to figure out what movies you wanted to write about, or did you kind of have in mind the ones that you already want to talk about?
Well, I've been following TIFF announcements as they've been coming out, and especially once TIFF R went up, which I don't know if people are familiar with it. It's a third-party site that helps schedule TIFF, or like schedule your individual TIFF. But about the time that I was working on this article, I was also buying my TIFF tickets. So it was very top of mind. You know, what am I looking at trying to get? What have I already been able to get? And I believe I picked ones that, for the most part, I already have tickets for. I think there's 2 or 3 in the article that I am hoping to get press and industry tickets for, which I can't get this early. But I went through everything that I already knew I was interested in seeing. I was not as meticulous in going back through everything as I should have been, because when I was preparing for this episode today, I went through everything again and noticed some things that I definitely had known at one point were playing at TIFF, but had completely forgotten about. So I'll talk about those later.
That's fair. I sort of was keeping up in the news a little bit in terms of I remember when the first wave of announcements came out, and after that, when there was a couple more waves of like the big highlighter headlining movies that were in those groups, but I wasn't familiar with the entire lineup. And so I went through and looked through every film that was playing to sort of read up on it. And it's so tough when, TIFF's got 200 plus movies playing, and you are trying to basically, in a snap decision, within 1 to 2 sentences, to decide if this is a movie that's interesting you or not, because you know that there's going to be 50 others that are interesting. So if it doesn't catch your attention within that log line, it's going in the garbage bin, basically, where I probably won't have time to see it. And it's sort of a shame because there's so many good things playing this year that I just had to like glaze over and be like, yeah, okay, but like I've got 20 other options, so I don't really know if this one that sort of sounds interesting is right up my alley or not. But yeah, I was very impressed with how stacked this lineup is. Overall, how do you find the quality this year?
I think it's amazing. I already had trouble narrowing it down to the movies I bought ahead of time, and I already didn't get 2 that I was that I was really hoping for. And there's still a whole bunch that I'm hoping that I can get into once I'm able to, you know, do press and industry and redeem those tickets as well. And frankly, no matter how many movies I see this year, there are going to be plenty that I was interested in that I just either didn't have time for or maybe completely forgot about because there's so many other good ones. This is just an incredible lineup this year.
Yeah, and then there's always the ones that like seem so nondescript and you just completely skip over it, and then you realize afterwards that everyone was talking about it. It was like the surprise hit of the festival. You're like, oh my god, I didn't even think about that one. Now I have to catch up with it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every year there's at least one of those. I'm trying to think of what they were the last couple of years. I want the first ones my mind jumps to are official competition,
Oh,
which
love that.
I did see there and did catch my eye at the festival, but did fly under a lot of radars. And then last year, American Fiction is a movie I heard about like the second to last day of the festival. And I was like, how have I not heard about this? And it turned out to be the People's Choice winner of all things. It just kind of like emerged during the festival, even though I know it must have been announced beforehand.
Yeah, I was sort of following along social media because I know people try to predict what's going to be the People's Choice winner because it does have huge reverberations because it, you know, almost 100% success rate gets nominated for Best Picture. And it sort of was one that sort of snuck up a little bit. I saw some people mentioning maybe that it might place for People's Choice, either second or third place. But I think it was overall a surprise that it ended up winning the award, which, you know, was a pretty big deal.
I remember being on this episode, being on the wrap up episode last year with Rachel, and both of us had been on the ground. And on the ground, it was no longer a surprise. Like, it was
Yeah.
not a surprise by the time it won, because over the course of the festival, you sort of were hearing murmurings of, like, oh, have you heard of American Fiction? This is a pretty good movie. You should go and see it if you can. Like, that and Hitman had sort of come up. And then when American Fiction did win, I feel like it was a surprise for everyone except the people who had been like hanging out in the VIP area of the Cineplex, or, you know, talking to other people around the festival for the
Yeah.
last couple of days.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be my first time going back to TIFF since I believe it was 2019. So I would love it. Do you have any sort of boots on the ground tips of how to make the most of a TIFF? Any little tricks that you learned in the last couple of years of attending to make it a more enjoyable or efficient experience?
Um
I know I'm
oh
putting you on the spot
gosh.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if enjoyable, well, I mean, I enjoy watching movies, but in between those movies, I don't know if enjoyability and efficiency are really my top priorities. Um, you can almost always, like, the rush lines. I know people don't like rush lines, but I think they tend to be kind of worth it if you don't have anything better going on. Like, if you're interested in a movie and there's no way to get the ticket, just go into the rush line, and, like, you know, your odds are pretty decent of getting in. They always let in a lot of people from the rush lines. Um, I really like the VIP area at the Cineplex. That's where I see a lot of like, I mean, when I say famous people, I don't mean like Ray Fiennes or anything, but I mean, you know, movie critics I've heard of once or people I've seen on YouTube tend to hang out in the Cineplex VIP area. So that's a good networking area. And yeah, other than that, I'm not really sure, because when I go to TIFF, like, I live close enough that I can pretty much stay at my house until it's time to go there, and then I live there for the whole day. Like, I just go to as many movies as I possibly can, and when I don't have something scheduled, I am in a rush line somewhere.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm wondering how it's going to work for me this year, having to like also write reviews and things like that. And this is going to be a bit of a new experience for you too, because you're going to write some reviews too. So it'll be interesting how it changes from previous years for to this year for you. You're also getting a press and industry pass for this year, which is going to be a first for you, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure what that's going to be like, because I know I have access to a couple of different areas. Last year I did try, mostly as an exercise, but still I tried to like write at least some thoughts for every movie. My process to writing reviews has evolved quite a bit over the last year. And I don't necessarily know if that's for the better. Like, I'm a little stressed out about how I'm going to do that during the festival. So it's going to be a little, it's going to be an interesting experience. We'll see how things go. How this year is different, if it is.
Fair enough. All right. Well, then, last little thing here, a little housekeeping is Spotify now allows you to leave comments directly on each episode. So I'm going to do my best to remind listeners every episode that if you do listen on Spotify, I'd love to hear from you. What movies are you excited for? Are you seeing anything at TIFF? Are there things that if you can't attend TIFF in person, is there things that you want to eventually see? What's high on your radar list? I'd love to hear some thoughts. And if we ever get any comments, I will make sure to read them out on following shows if I get the ability to remember that. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there, so I'll remind people at the end of the episode as well. But let's get into this. We, as I mentioned at the top, we wrote a blog post where we each talked about 5 movies we're very excited for. And as we have said, there's many more than 5 we are excited for. But we are going to each talk about 3 sort of briefly. And then at the very end, we're probably going to rattle off a couple honorable mentions that don't even appear on that blog post, just because we want to get into some extra names and give you something else to read about in case you want to read more about these movies that we're talking about. So we're just going to go back and forth here. I will start with the first film that I'm excited for. I'm just going to go sort of in alphabetical order of my list, and that is O Canada, which is the new Paul Schrader film, and it stars Richard Gere, Uma Thurman, Jacob Elordi, Michael Imperioli. But I'm excited about this. This is sort of a movie about a man who, an American man who, when he was younger, during the Vietnam War, he had moved away to avoid being drafted, and he moved to Canada. And now that he is an adult, he is telling his story to a documentary crew. And so Richard Gere is this older man, and in flashbacks, he is played by Jacob Elordi. And so I'm pretty excited for this. I alternated between loving and sort of only liking a little bit Paul Schrader's most recent Man at a Desk trilogy, which was oh wow, I'm blanking on the names of them right now.
First Reformed,
First Reformed,
The Card Counter, and Master Gardener.
Wow, thank you so much for remembering that. Yes, First Reformed, one of the best movies, of the last 20 years or so. Ethan Hawke's performance, absolutely incredible. Card Counter, I thought was pretty weak in my opinion. It had some really interesting stuff, but overall didn't care for it. And then Master Garden, I was positive on it, didn't love it, but I thought it was still pretty interesting, and I quite liked that film overall. So I don't know where late career Paul Schrader is going exactly, but I'm very curious, and I think that he's got some really interesting ideas in him still, and so because of that, I'm excited about this movie. Was this one that had crossed your radar at all? Are you a fan of Paul Schrader?
Oh yeah! As soon as I saw this one get announced, I was like, "Well, I'm seeing that." I was really excited to I was already excited when this one came out at Cannes. Not that I'm gonna go to Cannes in any foreseeable future, but when that got to Cannes, I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm gonna pay attention to this one, and I really like the name. It's about Canada, so that's
Yeah.
cool. I really like the cast. I'm a big fan of Jacob Elordi. I haven't seen Richard Gere in anything in a bit, but I'm excited to see him in something new. Uma Thurman is also in this, who again, similar things. I haven't seen her in a while, but I'm very excited to see her again. And I actually didn't know what this movie was about. I saw Paul Schrader, O Canada, Richard Gere, Jacob Elordi, and I was like, all right, we're in. Let's see it. But thank you for describing it. Now it sounds even more interesting. My parents actually live on an island filled with people who were Americans and have become Canadians to avoid the draft. So I think this is going to be a big hit on Hornby Island, for what that's worth. But yeah, I'm excited for this one. This is one of the ones that I prioritized making sure I had a ticket for as soon as I could, and I do in fact currently have a ticket for it. So I'm excited to see this one. I was a really big fan of First Reformed. I remember right when, the first time I saw it, I don't think it fully clicked with me right when I saw it, but not in a way where I didn't like it. But since then, I don't know if I've even rewatched it since then, but it just gets better and better every time I think about it. And frankly, I should just rewatch it. It's such an amazing movie. Card Counter, I didn't like very much, and I have not seen Master Gardener. But your endorsement is, I will try and put it in my preparation for TIFF list. I've been trying to prepare by watching a couple of different movies from directors who I'm seeing things from at TIFF. So I'll put that in there.
Yeah,
but yeah, this is one I'm very excited about.
Card Counter is better. Oh, sorry. the Master Gardener is better than Card Counter, not as good as First Reformed. So it's somewhere in the middle, closer to First Reformed than it is Card Counter. But the thing with Paul Schrader is, even when his movies are hot messes, they're still super interesting. And like, as much as I didn't really care for Card Counter, I do not regret that I watched it, because it was very fascinating and some really wild things were going on in it. I really appreciated what Willem Dafoe was doing in that movie in a very small part. Oscar Isaac, even when he's not totally right for a part, is still interesting to watch. So like, that's the thing with Paul Schrader, is like, I'm very curious to see what he does. And like, Richard Gere is an actor where I find he misses more than he hits. He has, in my opinion, a very limited acting range, but when the range is exactly in the scope of what is needed from him, he is a phenomenal actor. And I don't know if Paul Schrader and Richard Gere is a perfect matchup or not, but I'm curious enough to sort of see it. And then the thing with a Jacob Elordi is like, I really liked him in both Saltburn and Priscilla. I want to see, what else can he do? Like, this is a very interesting career, because I don't think he's as talented as some of his other peers, but I think he's so interesting and fascinating that, like, I want to see what he does next. Is he on the same level of some of his peers or not? We're about to find out, I think.
And I'll just throw this out there so that I can say as many names as possible before the end of the episode. Jacob Elordi is actually in a couple of different movies at TIFF this year. Another one he's in is On Swift Horses. So I'm to keep it on mostly on O Canada. I am very excited to just see. I mean, as you were saying, just like what kind of range does Jacob Elordi have? I've seen
Mm-hmm.
him in a lot of different movies. I've always liked him. I don't think that he's always been very similar in those roles, but he's also not exactly an actor who's taking on the weirdest possible thing every time. So I'm interested to see kind of what his career is like, just shooting up, and I'm interested to see kind of where that goes.
Yeah, for sure. All right, what is the first film that you want to preview, Jeff?
All right, I'm gonna go with one that this got announced at TIFF in my personal favorite section, Midnight Madness, and all of the ones that were announced at Midnight Madness this year were ones that were not already on immediately on my radar. So I did take quite a bit of time to look through them, and this one stood out as particularly interesting. Ick, directed by Joseph Kahn and starring Brandon Routh as a high school science teacher. The synopsis for this one is in the small American town of Eastbrook, nearly 2 decades after a viscous vine-like growth, colloquially referred to as the ick, began encroaching on every nook and cranny, a nonplussed populace have found their lives seemingly unaffected by the creeping anomaly. The exceptions to this oblivious conformity are high school science teacher Hank Wallace and his perceptive student Grace, who both regard the ick with a suspicious scrutiny that is soon violently validated. This just sounds super weird to me, and like in a very good way. I actually noted this in the article. I'm a really, really big fan of the movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers, both the '50s version and the '70s version. I think those movies are really good at just creating a horror atmosphere out of like something that you can't really explain why it bothers you, but it's just wrong, and kind of exploring what that feeling looks like. And this immediately gives me those kind of vibes, except that it's in a much more comedic take on that idea, which I'm very excited for. I mean, I'm just starved for body snatchers anytime I hear about it. So like anything that anything that raises that exact alarm, I'm gonna be very excited about. And this one, I like Brandon Routh. I like him. I like horror comedy, and I like the idea of sort of exploring something being off, but also nobody cares. Like the funniest thing to me is that this is 20 years after an alien invasion, and the aliens have done nothing and nobody cares about them, which to me is just an awesome premise to start with.
Yeah, this is a very fascinating one, and I think of the list that you prepared is one of the ones I am most curious about. It was one that I think when I was trying to make a list of movies I was most excited for, I was trying to tier them because eventually my list was just so unwieldy that I had to whittle it down somehow. It was one that I think made my list, but on the lower end of my list. I like Brandon Routh too. I have not seen Joseph Kahn's other film, which I can't remember what it's called. It never really went anywhere after Body. That's what it was called. It never really went anywhere after it sort of did the festival circuit. Uh,
I think Bodied may have been a YouTube original when YouTube was trying out YouTube Red. I could be wrong about that, but
mm,
that would have not done favors for it if I am in fact right about that.
Yeah, I would not be shocked if that was the case then, because I remember hearing a bit about it when it did the festivals and then nothing afterwards. Um, but yeah, this movie does sound interesting because you're positing it as something like, well, what happens if the Blob or Invasion of the Body Snatchers happened and no one cared? And I think that's just such a fascinating concept because we have seen these movies and people care a great deal. And I wouldn't be surprised given, this sort of laissez-faire attitude of a lot of things that happen in the world where you get like a small group of people that care about things very deeply and then everyone else is like, well, I've got more important things to worry about that isn't this, so I'm not even going to think about it. And that's sort of how I feel this movie might play out a little bit. And I think that's super fascinating. And I'm also totally here for a Brandon Routh resurgence because I think he's a very interesting actor. I think, he maybe got too famous and his expectations were put on him too highly for playing Superman back in the day. And I think he never really recovered from that, which was a bit of a shame because I thought he was pretty good in that film, Superman Returns. Um, but I think this might be something fun because he has shown that he can do these sort of like silly comedic roles where I don't want to say makes fun of his image, but he sort of goes against his image of being this like really handsome, muscular guy. And he doesn't go on full on meathead, but he does play a bit of a dumb guy pretty well, which I really like, as noted in things like Scott Pilgrim. He's terrific in very small parts there.
Yeah, this is a big year for the Scott Pilgrim cast. I just keep seeing them pop up in things. I'm watching a movie next week that has Alison Pill in it, and it's the second movie I've seen with her this year. So, you know, big year for Scott Pilgrim cast, and good for them. Actually, I really like that cast.
Yeah, yeah. So this is gonna be very interesting. And it's been a while since we've had like sort of a teen-ish horror movie hit it big. So I would be curious to see if this is maybe one that does. I think Joseph Kahn sort of works in a bit of a weird space where he isn't known enough that I don't know if he is going to transcend the more popular culture and this movie be a hit or not, or is it just going to be a Midnight Madness hit? So we'll have to see.
Well, and this is a big year for like smaller horror movies. Potentially too big of a year. Like I think that they're like the runaway hits of the year are kind of already determined, and it may be difficult to break past things like The First Omen and Immaculate. But people are currently paying attention to these a little bit weirder horror movies that come out. So this one could do it. Maybe it could break through since this is like a big year for horror.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, the next film on my list that I want to talk about is probably one that doesn't really need to be previewed. It's probably one of the most popular films that is playing the festival, and that is Jason Reitman's Saturday Night.
Look, my name is Lorne Michaels. I'm the producer of Saturday Night.
The whole night?
Yeah, the whole night.
Chevy Chase, Gilda Radner, Dan Iyek, how the fuck do you pronounce this?
Aykroyd. I was thinking, why don't we punt? We should run the dress rehearsal and claw back a win next Saturday.
We can't, Dick. It's a live show.
We're just not ready.
Doesn't matter that we're ready. It matters that it's 11:30. That's when we go on.
Lauren, all I'm trying to do is give you advice. It's in everyone's best interest, mainly yours.
Sorry, was that a threat?
Look around, Lorne. You haven't locked the script. Your crew is in open rebellion.
Fuck you! Fuck you! I definitely fuck you.
The writers on the 17th floor tied a belt around Big Bird's neck and hung him from my dressing room door.
I'm only going to be able to name a couple of the cast members because this is such an insanely stacked cast, but it's got Gabriel LaBelle, Cooper Hoffman, Dylan O'Brien, Lamorne Morris, Rachel Sennett, and many more people. But the synopsis is, in the mid-1970s, in a flip book of Watergate, Vietnam, and rising counterculture, make everything old in America feel broken, and everything new feel scary as hell. And now, yet another certainty is about to crack, because in 90 minutes' time, live from New York, it's Saturday night. So this is a biopic about the formation of SNL, as it is known colloquially. I am a huge Saturday Night Live fan. I watch it religiously every week. I have for years, and I love watching old episodes or sketches. And I have read the fantastic oral history of SNL, which, even if you sort of only have a passing interest of SNL, I totally recommend this, because you have basically cast members yelling at each other without knowing that they're yelling at each other, and airing dirty laundry and behind-the-scenes secrets that were not really known. And it's utterly fascinating to see that. And if you are a Saturday Night Live fan, seeing the creation of how these sketches worked and the back and forth that went to arrive on something that was groundbreaking and original and memorable is truly interesting to see. I've already seen the trailer for this a bunch of times, and I can't wait to watch this because this just seemed absolutely in my wheelhouse. Is this one that you're excited about? I can't remember. Are you an SNL fan? I think you are.
I have been in the past. I'm not going to say that I'm not now. Like, I still like SNL. I just don't watch it as religiously as I used to in high school. But I would say I am cautiously optimistic about this one. I really like SNL. I've seen that first episode, the one that this is all about, and I've seen bits and pieces of older episodes. I think I briefly tried to watch all of season 1, and I don't think that's possible anymore.
I don't think so, yeah.
But I've seen a bunch of old episodes way back in the day. I watched it religiously from about 2010 to 2012. And I keep seeing, new SNL and kind of keeping up with it. But like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic about this one because, for one thing, I think it's maybe an interesting idea on paper to make a, tense, not quite comedy movie about everything leading up to the first episode. I don't know how that's going to work in practice. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I think that that's that great an idea, but we'll see. I guess that oral history is there as like a precedent, and so there is definitely a good story there, which I've not read the oral history, so that may color my opinion a bit. And the other thing is Jason Reitman. Jason Reitman is the director of this, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Jason Reitman, he made Up in the Air, which is incredible. But the last time that he made a movie about his dad's friends was Ghostbusters Afterlife, which was a low point. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. That's my last exposure to Jason Reitman, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. But I do have a ticket for this one on Saturday, so I am excited to see. I don't have it for Saturday night. I have it for Saturday morning. So I'm excited to start off my Saturday, I think my second Saturday of the festival, with, learning a little bit more about Saturday Night Live.
Live from Toronto, it's Saturday Morning Live?
Yeah, it doesn't quite roll off the tongue, does it?
Yeah, I sort of am a very similar boat to you as far as my reservations. Jason Reitman is the biggest reservation I have about this film. Because he has not made a good film since Up in the Air, in my opinion. In fact, I think he's only made 2 good movies, and that's Up in the Air and Thank You for Smoking. and he's made a whole lot of duds. And that gives me a whole lot of pause. Now, when I saw the trailer, I'm usually a pretty good judge at if a trailer is edited, to hide that it's not good or if it's actually a good movie. And this trailer actually looks good. Now, is it being clouded for me because I'm like, oh, I recognize this person, I recognize this sketch, and I recognize what they're doing there or not? I don't know. I also have high hopes because based on everything I know about Lorne Michaels, the creator of Saturday Night Live, he doesn't mind being made fun of or being the butt of jokes. And so I would hope that he is fine being portrayed as a bit of a tyrant, because that's sort of what he was in the early days. He left the show because he couldn't handle the stress and the pressure of fighting with everyone for what his vision was. And I hope that he allows Jason Reitman to show that side of him, and that he's not, this savant genius that's so cool and calm and collected and all this sort of stuff. So I'm hopeful in that regards. Whether or not Jason Reitman actually portrays him that way is a completely different story. But it's also interesting because Gabriel Labelle is playing Lorne Michaels, and we just watched Gabriel Labelle play young Steven Spielberg, and here he is playing another young titan of the industry from the 70s. So that's going to be very interesting. And also Cooper Hoffman, Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, who we saw in Licorice Pizza, is now going to be back in another 70s biopic. So it's going to be very interesting to sort of see him again, because I quite liked him in Licorice Pizza. And this whole supporting cast, I'm on the IMDb page right now, it's absolutely stacked. Along with the names that I mentioned earlier, it's also got J.K. Simmons and Willem Dafoe and Finn Wolfhard and Kaya Gerber and Andrew Barth Feldman and Nicholas Braun. And it just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, the cast for this is insane. I would see this movie for Rachel Sennett alone, and probably for Willem Dafoe alone. There's a lot of people on this that are instant I need to see this movies, and we'll see how it goes. I'm excited. I am excited for it, even if I do have my reservations.
Yeah. All right, Jeff, what's the next movie you want to talk about?
All right, the next movie I'm going to talk about is Canadian. It's called Universal Language.
نازگل بودو بیا
نگین چرا داریم میدویم؟
سر یل تو یخ پیدا کردن.
آخه اصلا چطوری از تو یخ درش بیاریم؟
Alors on me dit que ta dernière journée ici, c'est ça?
Billet pour Winnipeg, s'il vous plaît.
On va discuter de ta nouvelle vie.
And the synopsis for this one: the lives of multiple characters interweave with each other in surprising and mysterious ways. Grade schoolers Negin and Nazgul find a sum of money frozen in the winter ice and try to claim it. Meanwhile, Masood leads a group of increasingly befuddled tourists through the monuments and historic sites of Winnipeg. Matthew quits his meaningless job in a Quebecois government office and sets out upon an enigmatic journey to visit his mother. Space, time, and personal identities crossfade, interweave, and echo into a surreal comedy of misdirection. So if that didn't sound very clear, I don't really get what this movie's about either. But that's part of what excites me about it. This is Universal Language, is directed by Matthew Rankin, who most recently made a movie called The 20th Century, which is such a bizarre, biopic exploration of William. Please correct me if I get this wrong.
King.
Yeah, William Lyon Mackenzie King, set in this surreal, almost German expressionist version of Ottawa, I believe. It was just so fascinating to watch, and I learned a little bit about William Lyon Mackenzie King, even though the movie was more focused on the feeling that facts give you rather than the actual facts themselves, like a Quebecois separatist who is very famous, but whose name I cannot remember, hatches out of an egg and like immediately starts leading Quebec and getting people to his side. And it's all very bizarre. And universal language is that's kind of what I'm hoping from universal language. When I read the synopsis about this, it seems like just a bunch of very strange little stories set in Matthew Rankin's version of Canada that are again more about like the feelings that this gives you than the actual facts. From what I've read, it looks like this is an imaginary version of Canada where the official languages are Farsi and French. And it's about sort of what the government would look like, what the lives of kids would look like, and what it would look like to be sort of an official in this world. And it sort of promises this surreal version of Canada that's maybe not as visually surreal as maybe as the 20th century was, because the 20th century, like, it's very interpretive. Canada is portrayed as shapes essentially, where this the promotional stills all do look like we're in an actual world, but it also looks like a very different world than the real one, and one that is very interpretive with what it's trying to do. It just seems very strange in a way that I typically like my movies to be strange. And so I'm very excited about it because I want to know what this synopsis means.
Yeah, here is a bit of a connective tissue to something that I was telling you off air before we started recording. I was saying how I've been buying too many movies and not watching enough of them. And I bought 20th Century several years ago, and I have not watched it. And I really regret that I haven't. And that means I should watch that before the festival because I really want to watch this film because it sounds super fascinating. And from what I know of 20th Century and Matthew Rankin, I think he might be one of the most imaginative and unique filmmakers working today, and it's probably only a matter of time before he has a huge breakout hit. I don't know if Universal Language will be that huge breakout hit or not, or it will be something else, but I completely believe that it will happen sooner rather than later. This all sounds super fascinating to me, though.
The 20th Century did do pretty well at the Canadian Screen Awards. I don't know how many it won. I don't think it won a lot, but it did get nominated quite a bit. So he is definitely at least on the radar of, the film industry in Canada, which is not quite the same as a big breakout hit yet. But I think I agree with you.
Like, it wouldn't surprise me if, in the next movie or two that he does, we learn that Neon or A24 has bought the rights for it.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, as just happened with the director of Blackberry this year, his next movie is A24.
Mm-hmm. And, like, the same thing with the director of Skinamarink, Kyle Edward Ball. I wouldn't be surprised if his upcoming movie ends up being purchased by Neon or A24 or something like that. So like there's these directors who are making really unique, interesting, creative films that are, just bubbling under the surface. And then we'll be able to look back and be like, yeah, but they've been here the whole time. And I think Matthew Rankin is one of those people. I'm very excited about this. I think the fact that he's doing this alternative world where I don't know why, Farsi has replaced English as the official language in Canada, but the decision to keep French as the official language, I think is going to say a lot about the way he's interpreting Canada, because as of right now, if you know anything about Canada, it's that Francophones and Quebecois influence in general on the country has slowly been dwindling over the decades, much to the chagrin of people that live in Quebec who often feel like they're forgotten in, the political stage and their needs and wants and things like that. And so it's going to be a very interesting aspect to look at what makes this Canada that he wants to represent. So I think that's really fascinating, and I'm curious to sort of see what he does with this. And then just one minor note, I know it's spelt lion, but it's pronounced loin. I don't know why. Yes, okay. Loin. It's one of those things that you just learn in grade school here when you're learning about different prime ministers. It's William Loin Mackenzie King, not lion. I don't know why.
Well, thank you for correcting me there.
No, yeah, all good. Yeah, so I'm very excited about this. From what little we see, it sounds like it's going to be different enough from 20th Century where it's not going to be like this feverish dreamscape aspect thing, but I think it's going to be unique enough still that it's going to have a very large Matthew Rankin stamp all over it.
Oh, well, I guess the last thing I would add is my first movie that I talked about was this year's one of this year's Midnight Madness titles. Universal Language is not that, but a few years ago when it premiered, the 20th Century was a Midnight Madness title. So this is Matthew Rankin. I don't think breaking out of Midnight Madness is the right thing, but it's interesting to me that first one, the vibe that it ended up sort of giving off was one that was appropriate for Midnight Madness. And I don't know if this one is appropriate or not for Midnight Madness, but like this one is not a Midnight Madness title. This is just in the rest of the festival, which I just think is kind of interesting. I don't know how much that actually means, but it'll be interesting, especially because I associate when I watched the 20th Century, the specific way that he approaches the surrealism of that world. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense for Midnight Madness. And I think that this one might be this one seems to be giving off a very different vibe.
Fair enough, yeah. All right, well, my last film that I want to preview is one called The Shrouds, which was directed by David Cronenberg.
It's been decades since I had to seduce a woman.
You'll never replace Becca.
I'm not trying to. What happened?
Looks like a tracking device. It's obvious they were tracking you through her.
Why would they do that?
It's not meant for the living.
Maybe not meant for the dead either.
And it stars Vincent Cassel, Diane Kruger, Guy Pearce, among others. And the synopsis is, Karsh, a technological entrepreneur, is still grieving the death of his wife Becca 4 years earlier. He has thrown himself into his work, devising technologically augmented burial shrouds that let loved ones watch their lost family members decompose. It's the closest thing to being there with them, and no, it's not for everyone. But when his wife's plot is among several desecrated and an apparent act of vandalism, Karsh slips into a full-on crisis that expands to involve Becca's lookalike sister Terry, her ex-husband Maury, and eventually Sue Min, the enigmatic wife of a dying Hungarian tycoon who wants to open one of Karsh's cemeteries in Budapest. Is Karsh losing his mind, or is some strange web closing around him? So if you read the blog post that we've mentioned several times now, basically the reason why I'm excited about this is it's David Cronenberg, and that's sort of the end. I can stop right here and not say anything else. David Cronenberg, if you like him, you're going to go see this movie. So before I get any deeper, do you agree, David Cronenberg, go see this movie?
Yes.
Excellent. Now, to expand on that thought a little bit further, I have really, really loved Cronenberg's later stage work. You know, he came up doing body horror, and that's what made him most famous, and a lot of people still really revere him for that, so much so that his two children are basically making body horror movies themselves now. But I've really liked his late career moves where they have been so much more thoughtful. And not saying that his earlier stuff wasn't thoughtful, but instead of body horror, it's almost like it's definitely more psychological horror and more drama added to it. And I really appreciate that, where, you know, I find a lot of artists, the older they get, the sort of less they have to say about the world, because how much can you, have issues with the world when, you can escape on a vacation to your own private island for 3 months and be cut off from the rest of the world and just, drink daiquiris on the beach or something like that, and never have to worry about your children's, grandchildren's, or great-grandchildren's future because it's all paid for. But Cronenberg seems to still wrestle with a lot of ideas, and the ideas of what it means to be human and connecting to others and memories and things like that. And I know he was previously married, and he lost his wife, and he has since remarried. But he has explored the subject of losing a spouse a few times before. And it sort of seems like he's sort of continuing with this trend. As he's getting older, he's grappling with his own mortality. So it's very interesting. And, Vincent Cassel, I think, is a very interesting actor. And I don't think he's worked with Cronenberg before, but he is the exact type of actor that I think is going to shine in a Cronenberg film. And there's been a few still images already released for this where they have these giant monolith gravestones with screens on them, which is already a terrific look. And there's a night shot where they're all sort of glowing, which you know is going to be really eerie. So yeah, I'm just very excited for this movie. David Cronenberg, that's it.
And also, actually, if you some of the press shots here, if you see Vincent Cassel in this movie, he looks exactly like David Cronenberg, which I think is just very. I mean, it's very clear what this movie is about, or at least I guess one interpretation of this movie is pretty obvious. Yeah, his last movie that he put out, which was called
Crimes of the Future.
Crimes of the Future. The very last shot of that still, I still think about that last shot a lot. It's that movie was so fascinating to me, and I mean, I know that I loved it, and I still don't fully know everything about it. Like I'm still thinking about it, and there's still more in there that I just didn't get the first time. And that last shot is such a strange, but also such a incredible last shot. Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about Crimes of the Future. For the Shrouds, I've seen a few reviews of this coming out of Cannes, and every single review, this movie does not by any means have universal acclaim. It had like a lot of detractors coming out of Cannes. It was very mixed reviews. But every review I've seen, including and actually especially the negative ones, have made this movie sound more and more fascinating to me. I am so interested in what he's sort of come up with his device here, and where this movie goes or doesn't go. And if everything goes according to plan, this will actually be the very first movie I see at TIFF this year, and I am excited for it to be that first movie. I'm really looking forward to this one.
That's exciting. Yeah, Cronenberg, I would say, it's so cliche to talk about movies that were like, oh, bad reviews, you just didn't get the movie or something like that. Cronenberg is probably one of the only directors where if I read a bad review, I could look at it and be like, oh, this person probably either didn't get it or it just wasn't on their wavelength, and because of that, it just completely did not work for them. He is such a anomaly in that regard where if I see a bad review of his movies, that doesn't mean this movie is bad. If I see a whole bunch of bad reviews about his movies, that still doesn't mean that the movie is bad. Like, I know Crimes of the Future was a very divisive film. I watched it the first time, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. And then I watched it the second time, and it shot up to near the top of my list of Cronenberg rankings, and I actually thought it was one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. I loved it so much. And so any bad reviews about this actually kind of encourage me, because you look at the history of his career, Crash was almost universally reviled when it premiered, except for a very small handful of people that absolutely adored it. And now it's, top 5 greatest Canadian films ever made, one of the best, body horrors, best sci-fi thrillers ever made, all that sort of stuff. And yet it still has plenty of detractors who absolutely despise that movie. And you can go through his entire career and it's like that. Basically, I think the only one that's universally adored is something like The Fly, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Which, for what it's worth, is a very good movie.
Yes, it is. But yeah, like, do you sort of agree that, like, negative reviews is probably, this would be the one director that doesn't stop me at all? And I don't want to say it excites me that there's negative reviews, but, like, I would just go, cool, this person either just didn't get it or it wasn't for them. Where more so than any other filmmaker, I think is probably a true adage.
Yeah, although with Cronenberg too, I would say that I even get excited about the negative reviews where the person clearly did get it, because I think I don't want to call out any specific critic because I know it was extremely divisive at Cannes, but I know there were 1 or 2 critics I follow who go through in quite extensive detail sort of how they interpreted this movie and how it's like, and they clearly got it. They were watching a movie and they understood what he was going for, and they didn't like it. But I'm like, oh, that is super interesting what this movie is supposedly about. And I guess like it sort of falls into that second category you said where it wasn't for them. But yeah, I would say I don't know. I don't love every Cronenberg I've seen either, but like even when he's doing something that doesn't necessarily work for whoever's watching it, it's still fascinating almost every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I'm very, very excited for this, and I cannot wait to see this as well. All right. Well, what is the last movie that you want to talk about there, Jeff?
The last one I want to talk about is, I think, maybe the first one that was announced at TIFF, period. The Life of Chuck, which is the latest movie by Mike Flanagan. The synopsis of this one is: the world feels like it's ending, and everybody's saying goodbye to Chuck. Wherever Marty goes, he can't get away from Charles Krantz. His face shows up on billboards, window signs, even TV commercials. What's so special about this seemingly ordinary accountant, and why does he warrant such send-off? Chuck's life story soon begins to unravel in front of us, going back to a childhood with grandfather Albie, who teaches him about accounting and passes on a love for dancing, all the while keeping him from a prophetic secret in the attic. So this movie stars Tom Hiddleston as Chuck, Chiwetel Ejiofor as Marty, and Mark Hamill as Albie, alongside Karen Gillan somewhere in the cast. I think that's Chuck's wife. And I'm interested in this movie because it's Mike Flanagan doing Stephen King, and Mike Flanagan and Stephen King have a shockingly good relationship. Stephen King I don't know that that this actually still applies to him, but he is pretty famously a bit curmudgeonly when it comes to adaptations of his work. But not with Mike Flanagan. For whatever reason, he's always really liked Mike Flanagan's takes on his stuff, and Mike Flanagan does like talk to him about adapting things. I know that the behind the scenes of Doctor Sleep is a really interesting story that I remember hearing about specifically on I think it was the first episode of the Bloody Broads pod, actually. But they go through a lot of that and sort of how Doctor Sleep adapts The Shining and Doctor Sleep and sort of what the behind the scenes looked like. And so, just that pairing is interesting to me. But also, Mike Flanagan and Stephen King, both mostly known for horror. This is not a horror movie. At least it's billed as not a horror movie. Now, there's bits and pieces in it which make me think that maybe it secretly is. But I think it's interesting to see sort of what they do outside of that genre space that they're definitely comfortable and and that they excel at. I mean, specifically, Mike Flanagan is probably one of the biggest name horror directors working right now, and I think we talked about him very briefly in our Fantasia episode. He he's well known for he's well known even as a horror producer now. But this is not a horror movie, so I want to see what he does with it. How does he work outside of that space?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting because Stephen King, while mostly known as a horror writer, definitely has plenty of works that are not horror based. Think of something like Shawshank Redemption is probably one of the biggest,
right?
But they're he's mostly known as a horror guy, and that's sort of his shtick. Horror or sci-fi thriller is sort of the milieus that he most often is working in. But he does have quite a few dramas and non-horror things like that. This almost sounds comedic in a sense, which is definitely a unique spin, and I could see it either working very, very well or the complete opposite of very well. And then looking at Mike Flanagan's filmography, I literally don't think he's ever done a non-horror thriller project as far as I can tell. Unless there's a couple things from before he got well known that I do not recognize at all. Maybe they were, but literally everything since he has became well known has been horror, and that's crazy. As the former employer of a Mike Flanagan production, that would be the Midnight Club. I worked on that TV show. I am curious to sort of see what he does. He's very much like, I know he directs a lot, but he's very much of a brains behind the scenes sort of guy as well. So every time, I'm always surprised when he does direct, because I'm always like, oh yeah, he does direct, because he's a writer and a producer, and like, you know, I don't want to say control freak, but he's someone who is a vision creator, not necessarily a director. That's how I think of him. So it's definitely going to be interesting to sort of see how this goes. I can see this going either way. I think it's an interesting one that you put on your list. I don't know if it's going to be high on my list. I'll probably wait for it to come out in theaters or however it gets released. But I think it's still an interesting pick from you.
Beyond that, there's a couple of interesting things on this. Tom Hiddleston, I really like him as an actor, and I don't see him in a lot of things. I actually am not sure whether I've seen him outside of a Marvel property personally. I know he's been in a few, but like, his Marvel work has so eclipsed everything else that I'm just excited to see him not as Loki and see sort of, you know, again, this has a lot of people in it beyond even just Mike Flanagan that are working outside of the spaces that they're most known for, and I'm excited to see how that works. Similarly, Mark Hamill, who I pretty much only know as the Joker or Luke Skywalker, or I guess from Mike Flanagan horror movies or horror shows. So a lot of interesting people just sort of in interesting roles. But also, one thing that I think we were talking about before we started recording, this movie is one that is at least billed as being told in reverse chronological order, which is always an interesting thing to me, and I'm excited to see how that works out, especially because in the synopsis, there's a lot of focus on the main character being Marty, who is Chiwetel Ejiofor, but then we're going backwards through the life of Chuck. So where is Marty in all of this? I think this is one where the synopsis and everything I read about this movie gives me so many interesting questions that I'm excited to have answered.
Yeah, it definitely will be interesting. And you look at the cast list, if you've seen a couple Mike Flanagan Netflix shows, you will definitely recognize a bunch of names here that he has worked with a lot, including his wife, Kate Siegel, Mark Hamill, as you've already mentioned, Rahul Kohli, Heather Langenkamp. These are all people who have had extensive roles in his TV shows. You know, the Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, Midnight Club. So this still is going to feel like a Mike Flanagan production regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how this one looks, and I'm going to wait for other people to see it before I decide whether or not I want to see it. So I'm going to be eagerly awaiting your review of this film.
That's gonna be that might be a problem, because if my schedule works out the way I have planned it, this will actually be the last movie I see at TIFF. So if any of your other reviewer friends watch it first, which likely at least one will, you should listen to them.
It sounds good.
And then listen to me, because I will review this movie, but not until it's no longer playing.
Fair enough. All right, those are 3 movies each that we're excited for. We're going to rattle off a couple honorable mentions here, very short. I'll go through 3 that I have that I'm pretty excited about.
Hi, I'm Annie. You don't have cash? Let's go to the ATM. Well, we could go chill out in a private room.
I got a kid who wants someone who speaks Russian.
My Russian is terrible. I can't even roll my R's.
No.
Я просто хотел тебе предложить. Ты хочешь быть эксклюзивно со мной?
15. Cash up front.
Deal.
Deal.
First one is, if you see one movie directed by a Coppola at this TIFF, I suggest you check out The Last Showgirl, directed by Gia Coppola, not Megalopolis from Francis Ford Coppola. But I'm excited about this one. I haven't seen either other of Gia Coppola's films. She's done 2 other films, Main Stage in Palo Alto. But this one is starring Pamela Anderson as an aging showgirl who's Vegas show comes to an end, and she now doesn't know what to do with her life after being a showgirl for 30 years. And so I think Pamela Anderson is a perfect example of someone who, with the right material, could have a huge year, and I think this will be it. And so I'm very excited for that. I think this is going to be an interesting one. And then the next one is the Palme d'Or winning film Anora, directed by Sean Baker. I've really enjoyed his last few movies, Red Rocket, Tangerine, Florida Project, blanking on some other ones that I've seen. But I'm excited for this. Mikey Madison seems to be a front runner for Best Actress, and so I'm excited about that. And the fact that Neon has had the last 5 Palme d'Or winners is just an absolute insane run by them, and they picked up this one from Cannes too, so I'm excited to see it. And then the last one that I want to mention is a movie called Relay, which is directed by David Mackenzie. I love David Mackenzie's Hell or High Water. It is one of my all-time favorite movies. And this one is starring Riz Ahmed and Lily James. It's supposed to be a thriller about whistleblowers. Those are all a whole bunch of check boxes that get me very excited. So this is one that is very high up on my list because I love corporate thrillers. So Jeff, I don't know if you have any very quick thoughts about those ones, or if you just want to get into your list.
The Last Showgirl, that's one that I'm hoping I can find time for. Anora, good luck getting any tickets to it. I think it was like the first thing to sell out at TIFF. But hopefully that means they'll either do other showings or, when I say good luck, I do mean it. Please, you should try to get tickets for it. People will always leave the line last minute. It's worth checking out. And I'm going to try and see it, but I'm not optimistic. And then Relay is one that I had briefly seen, but hadn't been on my radar, but now it is. And I have to watch, I got to watch Hell or High Water this week so that I can be prepared.
So good.
And then I will, I'll see if I can have time for that. Those are good. Those are good suggestions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, what are yours?
Keith Farrell.
Hey, how you doing, man? You know, it'd be cool is if we told my story with Lego pieces.
Seriously?
Yes.
Lego.
Just be open.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say.
When I was a kid, I knew I was different. And people would say, oh, that's an odd child. And that crushed my spirit. But I loved music. It was mesmerizing to me. I would see beautiful hues of light cascading. I just thought that's what all black kids did, stared into the speaker like, whoa.
All right, first one I have is Cloud. This is the new Kiyoshi Kurosawa movie. It's not playing very many times at TIFF, but it is something I'm really excited about. I recently watched Cure and Chime. Cure being, I believe, his directorial debut in '97. Chime being his most recent horror movie, or his most recent movie. Kiyoshi Kurosawa is he's a really excellent Japanese horror director, and I think that the coolest thing about his horror movies is they get at something really deep and kind of indescribable that just sits with you. I've been thinking about Cure since I watched it probably a month ago, and it's really upsetting. And so he's got a new movie coming out called Cloud. I don't remember if I said the name of it. Cloud is playing at TIFF, and it looks to be sort of an update of one of his previous movies, Pulse, but for a more technological era. And it sounds really interesting. And I love his style of horror. So that's one that I'm going to absolutely try and get to. Another one, the next one is The Return. This is a movie about Odysseus coming home and having to fight off his wife's suitors. The Odysseus in this movie, played by Ray Fiennes. Odysseus's wife in this movie, played by Juliette Binoche. So it's a bit of a English Patient reunion. This is honestly like the most interesting story from the Odyssey to me. I actually did a 15-page essay on the Iliad when I was in high school, and it didn't obviously extend over into the Odyssey, but I've been interested in those in those stories for a long time. And this is my favorite story from the Iliad. So seeing it adapted with Ralph Fiennes as Odysseus, that's extremely exciting to me. So I put this one in there as soon as I could. And the last one is Piece by Piece, which is this one's an interesting one. This one is a documentary, an animated documentary about Pharrell Williams and Pharrell Williams' career, animated entirely in Legos. So this is really interesting because I've been a big fan of the Lego movies since they came out, and I think that, or since they've started coming out, and I think that it's really cool to me that the next big Lego movie isn't something like the Lego movie or like Lego Batman or, you know, even anything fictional. It's a music documentary. I think that's just a really interesting direction for, you know, movies in that style, because that style is sort of its own, well, it's Legos. That is like there is like one creative force behind that. But I'm just really interested to see that. And the other thing I was interested in, I thought was really interesting about this, is Michel Gondry has a secret project with Pharrell Williams. And everyone thought it was this, but it is not. This is directed by Morgan Neville. And so there are just a lot of cool things coming out with Pharrell Williams this year, or, you know, over the next year and a half or so. And I mean, he's just having a big year. I want to see. I think this might be the second thing with Pharrell Williams I'm seeing at TIFF this year, and I'm just I'm excited. I'm excited to see multiple things by the same person at or, you know, featuring the same person at TIFF. I mean, as I said with Jacob Elordi earlier, I'm just interested to see sort of where people are when they're doing multiple things in one time frame. I was trying to keep it very short, so that's where I'm going to stop.
Yeah, these are, you know, Cloud was a movie that was sort of on my radar. It looked interesting. I have not seen any of other Kurosawa's films, so I can't really comment on his style. But this one definitely sounds very interesting, and I'm sort of curious about that one. I completely skipped over The Return. I don't even remember looking at this, but this sounds utterly fascinating. Wow, Ralph Fiennes looks absolutely jacked in this picture. Like, yeah. I cannot believe how well he looks for his age.
Yeah, he looks like he's been on a boat working out for 2 years.
Yeah, it's nuts. So yeah, this sort of has me curious. I know, you know, historical epics like this can be very hit or miss, so we'll see how this goes. I'm not familiar with Umberto Pasolini's work. Is there any relation to Pier Paolo Pasolini? I don't know. But seems interesting, and I'll wait to sort of see what the consensus is on that. And then Piece by Piece is an interesting one. Like, I don't know if I'm excited about it. I think the trailer looks fun enough, but, like, I still don't know about this one. And I, too, thought this was supposed to be a Michel Gondry film, because I heard that they were working on something together and saw that there was a biopic of Pharrell coming out, and I was like, oh, this must be the Michel Gondry one, because this seems weird and absurdist like Michel Gondry, but it is not, so I don't know what that project is supposed to be. But yeah, I don't know about this one. I don't know. Once again, I will wait to sort of see what the consensus is before I check it out.
This one I am hopefully seeing fairly early into the festival, so I will be able to give you first impressions and probably a review.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm sure there will be no shortage of opportunities to watch this after the festival, because I imagine this is going to get like a big release.
I don't know if it already has a release date, but I know that it was announced before it was announced for TIFF. It's one that they're definitely looking at making a big release for.
Yeah, like it's probably going to be a nominee for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars, I imagine.
Or possibly documentary, or possibly both.
Yeah. What was that movie a couple of years ago that got animated documentary and international?
Flea.
Flea, yes. Is it going to be this year's Flea?
Hard to say, but it's possible.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, those are a couple more movies that we're excited for that are playing the festival that are not in our blog post. Once again, that will be linked to in the show notes for you to check out all of the 5 movies that we wrote about. But yeah, I'm very excited for TIFF. This conversation has me even more amped up. Are you feeling the same way?
Oh yeah, and I know we are limited by time. Obviously, we are wrapping up right now, but if we had another hour, we could do the same episode again and like have entirely new picks. I wouldn't even need that long to pick them out. I'm very excited for TIFF, and as you said, I mean, I'm going to echo that sentiment. This conversation has me more excited for TIFF. I'm, in my head, I'm thinking, man, it's only 2 days away, but it's not. It's over a week and a half, and I'm just going to have to live with that.
Yeah, that is the struggle, as they say. But Jeff, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. This is a ton of fun. You're going to be writing some reviews. I'm going to be writing some reviews. There's going to be lots of great TIFF coverage. Of course, as always, there's going to be a TIFF wrap-up podcast after the fact. So lots of great TIFF coverage coming your way. But Jeff, where can people find your work, and what do you have going on?
Well, for the moment, people can find me on Spotify under Classic Movies Live. We're banking episodes right now so that we can make sure that we keep our release schedule during TIFF. But if you hear us talk about a movie that came out 2 weeks ago during TIFF, well, now you know why. We probably recorded it this weekend. But also we've recently been doing a series called Director Showdown, where we're going through where we have a tournament bracket with directors from the last 25 years, and it's been really nice so far. It's been really exciting. We just recently released our episode on Take This Waltz and Mother. So Sarah Polley versus Darren Aronofsky, which was a really cool conversation, which went in a direction I did not expect it to. So I think everyone should check that out because it was a really good one. And we have one more lined up that is not, it's not recorded yet, but it should be going up during TIFF, where we pit up Todd Field and Luca Guadagnino, whose pronunciation of whose name I am going to make sure I nail by the time we actually record it. But that's one I'm very excited for. We've got a very special guest on that one.
Nice. Well, I have queued up in my podcast app your next episode, the Director Showdown. Very excited to listen to it. It is already downloaded and ready to go. And the next episode sounds very fascinating. And speaking of Luca Guadagnino, he has a movie playing at TIFF called Queer. Because,
yes.
Just like you, let's just try to throw as many names in there as we can. One I'm very, very, very excited to see as well.
Also very excited for it, and I have my ticket already, so that is one that I am going to see.
Nice. Okay, well, yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. I'm going to link to all your stuff in the show notes as always, so make sure you check that out. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, Spotify now has comments. So, any of the movies that we talked about, are you excited about these ones? Did we miss something that you're excited about? Please tell us, let us know. Maybe we'll go and see that and review it for you specifically. This has been a That Shelf podcast. Visit thatshelf.com for more great film discourse. Follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at ContraZoomPod. Are you seeing anything this year at TIFF? Send an email to contrazoompod@gmail.com. Thank you to Eric and Kevin Smale for the theme music and to Stephanie Pryor for the logo design. If you like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, we do post all episodes there as well. And if you really like the show, consider tipping us on coffee. Thanks for checking us out.